Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha Priti, and I'm here with the family of seekers, and we're studying the Bhagavad Gita. We're studying the Bhagavad Gita, and we're trying to apply it in our lives so that as we're navigating our day to day, we're doing it more through the lens of the Gita. And that's what these studies do for us, that we meet twice a week and do this. So thank you all for your commitment and sacrifice of your time and consciousness to journey through the sacred text together. And good morning, Maria. You just joined. Good to see you.
Morning.
Happy you're here. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and start. Does somebody want to volunteer to read today? Oh, Maria. Great. Okay. We're going to do, I think, four. Oh, Maria and Mariah. Great. Let's alternate again then. And we'll do four verses, 34 through 37. So we'll start with 37. Let me just share my screen. And Mariah, if you want to start with 34.
Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth.
Great. Okay. So here, this chapter's, we've been talking about transcendental knowledge. This chapter's called Transcendental Knowledge. And we're really learning about how powerful it is, right? Just knowing God, the individual soul, the relationship between the two, it can liberate us. And in the last section, Krishna talked about various forms of sacrifice. Remember, we went through all of those forms of sacrifice that you can go through to gain knowledge, right? And we talked about how anything in our lives can be a sacrifice if we're doing it in that consciousness of selfless service, of devotion to God, right? So now in this last section of the chapter, we're going to talk about how to acquire this transcendental knowledge and what the results are, right? And again, as we talked about, all work can be a sacrifice, and all sacrifice can lead to knowledge, right? And how do we get knowledge, right? How do we get this spiritual knowledge? It's not like material knowledge where we can just study books and listen to lectures and get degrees, right? It's like material knowledge is all about like how much information we can cram into our heads, right? And the more information that you can cram into, the more intelligent you are, right? Spiritual intelligence doesn't quite work like that, right? The real show of spiritual intelligence is how it's transformed your heart. So it's not just about knowing, it's about being, right? How it's transformed our hearts. And for that, there's a process of which to obtain it. Okay, it's not just studying, just reading books. I mean, reading books is great, but the process, there's a little bit more to it than that, right? And what it's saying here, what this text is saying here, is that we have to go to a spiritual master who has it, right? So like a guru who's walked the path, who walks the talk, right? And who has this knowledge, right? In the third chapter, we talked about how lust covers a living entity's intelligence. If you remember that in 339, we talked about it talks about how all living entities have knowledge, but currently it's covered, right? The spiritual master's been able to uncover the conditioning that's there in his own life, right? And because he has the knowledge, he's seen the truth. And after seeing the truth, he can explain it to us and he can help us come to it ourselves, right? Like a kind of like a coach. Like if anybody's ever been like an athlete or, the spiritual master, he gives us guidance on how to advance in spiritual life. And we need a coach, right? We need a coach because the journey, it's mostly internal and we can't always see it ourselves, right? We can't always see our own shortcomings. We can't always see, what's blocking us on the path. We can't always see, when we're self-sabotaging ourselves. These things aren't always so intuitive to us. So we need somebody who's walked the walk before and can help us with ours, right? Because he's made this journey. The spiritual master's made the journey and they're linked with God's vision, like God's eternal vision, they're linked with, and He can show us what we struggle to see. Right? So, in order for us to link ourselves with God's vision, right, we link ourselves through the guru. And in that, there's a certain way that we need to approach him, right? So, in order for this process to work, there's a certain way that we need to approach this relationship with the guru. And that is with humility, with inquisitiveness, and with a service attitude. That's what this verse says. Right? So with humility, we approach in the mood of like, I don't know the way, right? I can't discern this internal landscape. And what this does, just approaching this guru with this mood, it enables him to show us the way, right? Automatically, we're kind of letting our guard down and we're open, right? We're not only we're open, but we're seeking, right? And that's where we inquire with inquisitiveness, right? Where we're curious, where we really want to know, right? We have this longing to know. And in this, it enables us to start seeing the way ourselves, right? We can develop the capacity for deeper thinking and deeper observations when we're inquiring. And then the service attitude, right? This enables us to move along the way. So in the application of humility and inquisitiveness is in this service attitude, right? We serve Krishna per the guru's instructions, knowing that God is the source of enjoyment, right? Oftentimes we think that we're the source of enjoyment, that everything's about, that life is about, how am I going to enjoy, right? Where's my personal source of enjoyment? When we do that, we're under the illusion, right, that us serving ourselves, us being the center of enjoyment, is where we get the most fulfillment, right? When the reality is that service to God will grant us the most fulfillment, the greatest fulfillment, greater than anything in this world, right? So we approach with that mindset. And once we get that realization, not just know it, but once we realize it, right? There's a difference between knowing and realizing. Once we realize it, then the temptations of the world don't lure us anymore, right? So even if we don't feel it now, even if we're not there now, if we keep serving, if we keep to the process, we'll develop our affection for God and we'll gain realization. And this is the process that we do it, right? We approach a spiritual master and we approach him with humility, with inquisitiveness, and with a service attitude. Right? The humility enables the guru to show us, right? Inquisitiveness enables us to start seeing it ourselves, start seeing the way ourselves. And the service attitude enables us to move along the way. And this is the process. And if you notice here, these three qualifications that we just listed, humility, inquisitiveness, and service attitude, it has nothing to do with intellect, right? Like material, when we approach material problems or, pursuits, it's like, how much can we know? How much can we figure out? How much can we use our critical thinking? And that's kind of sometimes like the metric of success, right? The things that it's going to determine how successful we are is to the degree that we can kind of flex our intelligence in that way. But with spiritual knowledge, it's more about these qualities, right? It's more about how we can approach with sincerity and devotion, right? Than with just raw intellect. And this is difficult, right? This can be difficult because it challenges our pride. It challenges our pride and our vanity because it implies that like even if you're the smartest person in the world, it's not enough, right? That's not going to make you truly knowledgeable. So even if you're a scholar or a philosopher, that's great. But if you're not approaching this text, this scriptures, this relationship in the right mood, it could even be counterproductive because you could become prideful, right? It could invoke pride in the heart that you know so much, that you have such a great capacity for learning and remembering and cramming information into your head, right? Such that your heart becomes full of pride. And when your heart becomes full of pride, that's not a place we can cultivate humility, right? So it's important to notice how different it is than material knowledge, than acquiring material knowledge, right? And the spiritual journey is an inner journey. We have to realize that we're the soul and that the soul is connected to God. And this is really difficult. This is really difficult because we're filled with our own anartas, right? Our anartas being lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, illusion, right? We're filled with those things. Right? We're slave to those things. And they continue to enslave us life after life. So in this way, we need a guru, right? We need a guru to kind of cut through all of the weeds that exist so that we could see the treasure beneath, the treasure being the spirit soul, right? That is Satchitananda, that is full of bliss, that is full of knowledge, that is eternal, that's surrounded by all these weeds of lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, illusion that cover it, right? So we need a guru to help us chop through that. And that's the job, that's the role of this guru, right? They help us to turn towards God through their own example and their own connection with God, right? The disciple, like we'll get inspired when we see such a guru living according to these principles. And I remember when I first met my guru, he was giving a talk and I just happened to be at it. And I remember sitting after the talk was over, like everybody got up and left. And I remember just sitting there, like kind of unable to move, just like so moved by his overall just like presence. Like in his presence, you could just feel the level of love and compassion that has for everybody. And it was so moving to me. And at the time, I was in like a very controlling romantic relationship. I've talked about that a lot. And seeing my guru and like seeing this example of just like pure selfless unmotivated love, it made me realize how what I was involved in wasn't love, right? It was like such a drastic comparison, like black and white. It was like, oh wow, this is not love at all, right? Just being in his presence. And shortly after that, maybe a couple weeks, I asked him to be my guru. And I remember I was gonna go see him speak when I got back home. This was in India. When I got back home in New York, I was gonna go see him speak. And I was with my boyfriend at the time. And this was a relationship I had been in for like years. And I was gonna go see him speak, and my boyfriend didn't want me to do that. He was pretty controlling. I told him I was gonna do it anyway, and he said, okay, well, if you don't care what I think, why don't you just break up with me? And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. I think I'm gonna break up with you. And it was like just that, the profound love that I felt in the presence of my guru. It was so inspiring that I knew that I didn't want to have anything less than that in life. And it was like the one thing that could get me out of that relationship that I had been in for several years was just, again, how impactful that was. And my guru continues to be that kind of example to me in my life, that inspiration. I want what he has. I see the way he moves about in the world. I see the way he interacts with everybody, and I want to be like that, right? So this is how the guru inspires us because they have it and they can lead us down the path. Right? And the guru, they have to come from parampara, right? We talked about this earlier in chapter 4, this line of disciplic succession, right? And this line, it's knowledge is passed down from person to person to person, starting with the sun god. Remember, we talked about that? Well, starting with God, but he's talked it to the sun god. So the link, it's not just of the head, but it's a link of hearts, right? It's a link of hearts. I don't know why my camera goes blurry. I'm sorry that happens. It's just a very strange thing. We might just have to deal with me being a little bit blurry because I'm not sure why that happens. Okay, so the hearts get linked. This is parampara, right? They get linked together in this principle of selfless devotion, right? And then the disciple becomes a spiritual master. So this is how it's passed down. And also important to note, the spiritual master tests the disciple to see if they're sincere, right? But at the same time, the disciple should also test the spiritual master. So this is where we don't just like blindly accept or blindly jump into these kind of relationships. I mean, this is a pretty powerful thing, right? We need to make sure the person that we're extending this level of trust and faith in is worthy of that, right? Are they living by these principles? The things that they're speaking, the things that they're teaching, do we see that in their lives, right? Do those things match? So we spend a little bit of time observing this and making sure that we're seeing this congruency in their lives. So, a lot of people say, or an argument maybe, why do I need a guru to connect with God? Right? Can't I just connect with God on my own? And it's true. You definitely can connect with God on your own. But a guru doesn't come between us and God. He removes what is between us and God. Right? And what we've put between us and God is the wall of our false ego, right? Our own misconceptions. If we remember back in chapter 2, I think, we talked about the soul and the super soul and how they're sitting right next to each other like birds in a tree, right? And the super soul is just observing, right? And waiting for the soul to turn back. But between the two birds, there's this wall of misconception, right? It's right between them. And therefore our desires get misdirected. So what the spiritual master does, he comes in and he gives us the knowledge and the process to break down the wall, right? And in breaking down that wall, he connects us to God. So this transcendental knowledge that we receive, it's a gift. It's a gift that we receive, and it's understood again in the heart, not just the brain, right? And the key to open up this door of wisdom, right? This house of wisdom. The key to open it up is our own sincerity and our own willingness to sacrifice and serve, right? And apply and share the knowledge. That's how we open up this treasure, this reservoir of transcendental knowledge, right? If we have a deep desire to understand and we're serious about it, right? We're serious about actually applying it to our lives, not just studying it, but actually applying it to our lives, then God will give us the necessary intelligence to understand it. That's a beautiful thing. I feel like I've experienced that in my own life. Even when I'm like teaching and I feel very inadequate or unqualified, somehow, just through prayer, I feel like God arranges it all for me. Anything I'm worried about is like taken care of, right? Because it's not actually me anyway, right? It's God, and it's God working through me. And in that way, if we can just get out of our own way, God will give you whatever you need to serve him, whatever intelligence that you need. This is kind of a funny story that I saw when I was studying this. It said, just kind of a little antidote. It says, once a man told his guru, I can recite the Bhagavad Gita in 45 minutes. And his guru said, can you live it in 45 minutes? Can you live it for 45 minutes? Sorry. Can you live it for 45 minutes? So again, it's not just about knowing the knowledge, but it's about deeply contemplating its meaning, right? And conscientiously applying it to our lives. And then once we do that, sincerely sharing it with others. And that's how the wisdom comes alive. This is how we experience. This is how the knowledge turns into wisdom, this realized wisdom, right? God awakens the knowledge in the heart. And he does that when he's pleased by our selflessness and our sincerity. We should understand that it's not a result of our efforts alone. So oftentimes we like to feel like I did this and I got that and I deserve that, right? Because I did all of this, right? No, but this is obtained by grace. It's a gift. It's given to us, and it's given to us by grace, not because you are so great, right? Not because you're so smart, right? So where material education can be seen as linear, right? We just acquire more and more knowledge. We get more and more smarter, right? Is that even, I don't think that's grammatically correct. But anyway, we get more and more knowledge. Spiritual education is more like a spiral, right? We hear the same verses, the same stories, the same lessons, but we study them from different angles. And gradually we get deeper and deeper understanding of their essence, right? So in that way, it's like a spiral. Again, this knowledge doesn't develop in the heart just by hearing it. We have to humbly serve these exalted souls, right? These realized souls. And this is the way God created the process, right? He created it like this. He reciprocates with his devotees. And so people that have given him everything, like our gurus, right? like I know my guru has given God everything, right? They become the authority on the way out of this material existence. And that's the system that God has created. So we have to follow someone, right? We're all going to follow someone in this world, whether we know it or not, right? We're influenced, we're inspired by those around us, right? So understand who we should follow, choose the right authority, and by that you can become purified, right? You can become purified, you can become enlightened, and ultimately you can become liberated. And this is the process that Krishna's teaching us here. So it's not just about reading or mundane knowledge, right? It's about this relationship, and it's about the way that we approach this relationship, and it's about the transformation of the heart, not just storing knowledge in our brains. And then that way it's beautiful, right? Does anybody want to share anything before we move on to the next verse? I might try to fix my camera here. Excuse me while I fix my camera. Oh, look at that. It worked. Okay, does anybody want to share anything? Miss Katie, are you raising your hands? Could you want to share something?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I thought I would just share um, how grateful I am with my finding my teacher, my main person, and how it was such a interesting gift from Krishna. Um, and also how actually I mean, we do a lot of kirtan and a lot of like learning about the different days, like Radhastami and um just I don't know, all the stuff that comes up over the whole year. But a main part is really applying all of this knowledge to relating and relationships and troubles and my material world and just how I man, I like never ever wanted to stop. It's every Tuesday morning for 3 years. And um and I think also part of what I want to make a point about is that that kind of consistency, it doesn't have to be once a week, I think, but I would encourage, it's really worked nicely for me at this time to make it really consistent. And before that, I kind of would call it like anchors. Like I would do this Thursday night thing with Hari Kirtan Das, and I wasn't as involved yet. And, like I met devotees in Sep September 1st, 2019. So there was a few years before I was really in it and not as much knowing what's going on. So I felt like, wow, these I don't really know, just the times I had with Hare Kirtan, I was like, oh, they feel like anchors and I need more of them, but they weren't as consistent. Um, and yeah, it's just such a kind of a beautiful story. So I'll just quickly share that. Um, I had met Hari and Elizabeth at some of you might know his partner, kind of going to a random kirtan that I just heard about because I happened to re-break my foot and be out of work. So I'm like, Krishna, I'm like, thank you for making me able to not be at work and like hobble over there. And then, a couple years later, they invited me on a spiritual vacation to Shyam Ashram, in Cali, Colombia. And yeah, so and I was like, ooh, I don't know if I can afford it. And I need a lot of time to save up money with my wages and stuff. So, um, but I was like, well, I hope I can go because it's like the day after my 40th birthday. It's like basically on my 40th birthday. And then Elizabeth said, hey, two of us, another girl who you kind of know, if that, want to wanted to give you money to come. And I was like, then I think I will come. Thank you. You don't even know it's my birthday. Thank you very much. And so I feel like it was just such a serendipitous gift from Krishna. And I remember the moment, like we got there kind of late in the dark at night. And then the next morning, like getting up, um, I was introduced to japa that day and started my japa practice that day. And I met Bhavagrahi that morning, you know, and yeah, I just thought it might be nice just to share like how sweet and perfect and amazing it was for Krishna, like to make that my path, and just how beneficial it is. Yeah, thanks.
Wow.
Right?
What a What a beautiful story. Yeah, to have people just come through and donate like that to,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's such a good point too. If you don't have something like this in your life or you want more, to the degree that you're sincere, God will put it in your life. So really all we have to do is desire. We have these spiritual desires. If we pray sincerely for them, God will arrange, if you're missing that link or you need another teacher or
Mm,
someone you can relate to more, whatever it is, God will arrange. It's really
mm.
beautiful. Thank
Yeah,
you for
thanks.
sharing that and reminding us we don't have to over endeavor. This isn't the material world. We don't have to over endeavor. We have to sincerely desire and do our part to try. I mean, we absolutely have to put the effort in. But I don't know. I tend to be like an over endeavor because I'm so like caught up in the controller mentality, right? I could do this. I know I can do this. But we God gives us his grace. We just have to accept it, right? The grace is there for us. This gift is there for us. We just have to accept it and make space in our lives for it. It's,
Mm,
yeah, really beautiful. Thank you.
mm.
Okay, Maria, do you want to read 35?
Having obtained real knowledge from a self realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion, for by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine.
Okay. So 35. So he's saying this is the first verse of the Gita where he talks about his relationship with the living entities, with the living beings. So it's kind of sweet. Right? He describes two results from having the spiritual knowledge. Right? One is you'll never fall into illusion. And the second is you'll see all beings in parts as parts of God and within God. Right? I think that's what I saw in my guru. I was like, I want to be that. I want to imbibe that. Right? Because people free from illusion see all living beings on a spiritual platform, right? Once we can get out of our own way, our own false ego, our own selfishness, we can see all living beings on that platform, right? Our own desire to enjoy or exploit, right? We could see all living beings on that platform. And we see that all living beings belong to God, right? We belong to God. And if we stop a minute and think about what that really means, right? That we belong to God. One of our deepest longings is to belong, right? To be accepted, to be valued, to be respected, right? To be loved. If you think about all the different ways that we've tried to fulfill these needs in this material existence, right? I know I think about all the different ways I've tried to fulfill these needs, right? Getting involved in different circles, relationships, sacrificing my values, right? Purchasing things. Anybody purchase things to be cool, to fit in, right? Trying to make more money to purchase more things or to become, more respectable, right? I did all of this, all of these things, right? I never really felt the freedom to be who I actually was until I got some kind of like glimpse of this realization into my eternal identity, right? In relationship to God. And this almost like gave me permission to accept who I was and what I wanted and to have something to live for, right? It's because it took things out of the superficial. It was like, okay, this isn't me. These superficial things, they're not me. What's actually me is my eternal identity, and that's what I'm loved for. So all these other things are kind of like little secondary things that I can lean into and I can learn about on my journey, right? To uncover my soul, but it's not actually me, right? And I don't have to look for love on that level, right? I don't have to change who I am to be loved on that level, right? It's like I don't have to be who these people want me to be or keep up with the Joneses to be valued, right? Because I'm already loved. I'm already loved for who I am at my core. And it's just like such a relief, right? We belong to God. We don't have to try to belong to anyone else. right? Because we already belong to God. So in that way, we can just kind of lean into who we are and who we aren't, knowing that at our core, we belong to God. And it's beautiful, right? This longing that we have to belong, it can't be fulfilled long term by anything else but that, right? And by basing our sense of belonging on all of those things, it's just like chaining ourselves to anxiety, right? Because those things are temporary. We're gonna lose them all, right? And what hurts more than losing those things is losing the loss of belonging that we've tied to it, right? This is why it's like it's not even fulfilling to do, but even if you do it, even if it's good for a while, we're going to lose it. That relationship, that house, that job, whatever it is that gives you that sense of belonging, you're likely going to lose it. And when you lose it, what is really difficult about losing it is that that's how we were feeling like we belonged. That's how we were feeling like we were accepted. That's how we were feeling like we were respected, right? So if we could just get rid of all of those misconceptions and understand that the only real belonging that we have is in God's spiritual circle, right? Where we're valued for being part of God. And all of these other kind of secondary identities in this material existence are really just made to support that, right? And understand their nature, that they're temporary, that they're going to come and they're going to go. And therefore, our deepest sense of belonging, we should look to be fulfilled in God's spiritual circle, right? Because He loves us unconditionally and unfailingly, right? All we have to do is enter His circle, and we can realize that, right? And this verse tells us that this spiritual knowledge frees us from illusion, and we realize that we belong to Krishna. So if we could develop this spiritual knowledge, that misconception of looking for everything else in this temporary existence to give us that sense of belonging can be lifted, right? Like fog, it could be lifted, and we could actually understand our true identity and our true sense of belonging. Right? And we could see the others for what they are. And in that way, life becomes so much less anxiety ridden, we become so much more content, right? We become full of love. And in that way, we have more love to share with those around us. Right? So he's telling Arjuna here, don't think that you're the only one concerned about the people on the opposite side of the battlefield, right? Like you think that you know what's best because they're your family, right? And you have these family attachments. Don't think that you're the only one concerned. I'm also concerned, right? They're a part of me. And I'm telling you, this is what's best for them. And that's kind of the context of where we are in the Gita and what this verse means to Arjuna specifically. You know, is don't think that because you're related to them by this temporary bodily identification that you know best, right? I'm God, I know best. How often do we need to tell ourselves that in our own lives, right? Where we think that we know best. So when we acquire this knowledge, there's freedom from illusion, and we see all living beings in Krishna. And this is spiritual vision. This is the result of acquiring knowledge. So when I saw my guru at that, when I see him imbibing this love for every being, he's realized this knowledge to such a deep place, right? He's really internalized it that he's living it. He's become just that. Right? And it's inspiring. And that's what makes us want to come to this practice and want to commit to this practice. That's what made me want to come to this practice and commit to this practice and spend all this time, even when I wasn't feeling things immediately, right? Because immediately it's kind of gunky, right? Immediately, like a lot of your own stuff comes up. You maybe have a lot of doubts. You maybe start seeing how like attached you are to things, to these material things, right? You start seeing really a lot of your own selfishness and right. Maybe it might not feel so great at first, but seeing these high examples of people that have gone through the process, people that have committed their lives to this and have come out just these vessels of love, it inspires us. It gives us the motivation, right? It gives us the perseverance to continue on, even if we're not feeling it in that very moment, right? And this is a tall order, right? This means that we have to see everybody as a part of God, right? Learn to love everyone as God does. This means the person who annoys you, irritates you, frustrates you, right? Your jerk boss, your terrible ex, right? We have to love them all. And that's what the Gita is teaching us. It teaches us that this world, it's like a university meant to teach lessons in love, right? And the lessons expand our love until it reaches its full potential of loving God. That's our full potential of love. That is love, right? And through him, we love all of his creation and all of his creatures. And this love that we could, if we could develop this love for God, and that's why we do this process, that's what this process is helping us do. This love itself transforms us, right? It makes us become more godly and therefore love like God does. So if you think about, like a love that you've had in your life, how that can transform your heart, right? But think about if you could have that love for God, how that could really transform your heart, right? Having that kind of love for somebody or a creator, right? Who's everything. I mean, it's hard to even fathom that because nothing in this material world exists like that. But God is everything. And this kind of love, if we could develop this kind of love, it's so powerful. And so this is the process by which we develop this kind of love. And I remember when I got pregnant, my really good friend told me that having kids is an opportunity to see how God loves us and how God wants us to love. Right? It's like we have these kids, we love them for no reason other than they came from us, right? So it's like whatever they do, it doesn't matter, we love them. And it's not like they really do anything for us, right? In fact, the whole thing's just a big sacrifice that we make. But through that, we feel so much love for them. And it's like we feel like they could do anything and it doesn't matter, we love them. Right? So we can give our kids that kind of grace, but we can't give, our boss or our really annoying colleague like a smidget of grace. And so this is why this is why this is the process. We love God, and through God we could love all of his creations, right? And all of the creatures. It's so powerful. God loves those who are unlovable, even the most selfish of people. God loves, right? Because he sees our true selves. He sees our pure soul. And he sees everything else just in the way of it, right? He sees it for what it actually is, like those weeds, right? They just need to be plucked. But if those are plucked, the pure soul is there. So this verse tells us that the result of this wisdom is the vision of love. So if we can aspire for this wisdom, this transcendental knowledge, in a sincere and committed way, right? If we can aspire for this, the result is this vision of love, right? The ability to see, as God does, the divine spark within everyone. Even the unwise can love the lovable, okay? So even the unwise can love the lovable. It doesn't take somebody who's, it's somebody who's really lovable. It's pretty easy to love them, right? We all have those people in our lives. We think about like, wow, they're so easy to love, right? But think about the most unlovable person in your life, right? The most unlovable person, it takes real wisdom to love them, right? Because we don't love them for who they are on the surface, right? Who they are on the surface is like, I don't even want to touch that, right? We have to love them according to their core. We have to love them because we love God, right? Not because of the way that our ego interacts with them, right? Not because of the mask that they wear, right? And to cover themselves, or the way that they're acting towards us, right? That it offends us, right? We certainly can't love them because of that. We have to love them because of who they are at their core. And who they are at their core is a creature of God, right? Belongs to God. And it takes real wisdom to get to that realization. But that's what God is asking us to do, right? We have to understand that everyone is out there dealing with their own conditioning, and that doesn't make them unlovable, but it makes them human, right? And we may be fortunate enough to have a certain amount of knowledge so that we can maybe shed some layers of our conditioning. But we should understand that not everybody is, right? And in that way, we have to have compassion for them and love them anyways. And this is our task. This is what we're out to do in this life, right? Love them anyways. Love the most unlovable and acquire the amount of wisdom that is necessary to do that. And this is the process that we do that, right? And it doesn't mean that we drop all of our boundaries in our dealings with people that are unlovable, right? It doesn't mean that we hold on to infinite levels of hope, right? That they'll change, right? When we've seen time and time again that it doesn't happen, right? We can't play God. We can't step in and say, okay, I'm gonna put myself in a vulnerable situation here so that maybe this person will change, so that maybe then I can feel good, like I did this to them, and I'm happy with myself. I'm playing God in that way, right? No, we still have to be functional in our ways of dealing with them. It just means that in our heart of hearts, we don't carry any resentment or ill feelings for them, right? And that we're their genuine well-wisher. Their genuine well-wisher. So we were happy when good things happen to them, and we want that in their lives, right? We don't have any ill feelings. That's what this means in our heart of hearts. What the kind of energy that we're resonating from them, right? And that's what this love is. That's what this level of wisdom can do for us. And although we're separated parts of God, we're not different from him. That's the point here, right? We're the same in quality, but we're different in quantity. So our soul, like we talked about, our individual soul, it's a spark. It's a tiny spark, like one ten thousandth of a hair or something. Like it's tiny, right? So God is infinite, right? We're finite. But we're the same in quality. We're that same essence, that Satchit Ananda, that spiritual quality, we're the same, right? And so since this is our true identity, these bodily differences are not actual fact, right? They're temporary, and they'll be this at one time, and then they'll be this at another time. But our true eternal identity, it doesn't change, right? So therefore, these temporary bodily relationships are not more important than our eternal spiritual relationship with God. And that's what God was telling Arjuna here. These temporary bodily relationships are not more important, right? I know you think you know what's best for them, but I know what's best for them. Right? And even the thought of a separate identity apart from God is not actually fact, right? Because we're all parts and parcels of God. We come from God, so we're part, right? We're part of God because we come from him. But we're also eternally individual units, right? Our souls are internally individual units, parcel. So we're part and parcel. We come from God, but we're also eternally individual units. And therefore, we have a purpose to fulfill. And we've forgotten that purpose, right? We've forgotten that purpose, that we're part of a whole. And therefore, we go through life acquiring all these different bodies according to our desires, right? Because we've forgotten our true nature. Our true nature is to serve God. And when we acquire knowledge from our spiritual master, we can avoid this delusion that we're equal to God, right? Perfect knowledge is the knowledge that God is the supreme shelter. We voluntarily give up that shelter and imagine that we have an identity separate from God. And we take on different material identifications and we forget God. So this knowledge liberates us. And liberation means to understand our actual position as a servant of God. Right? Because we are a part of God, we can't thrive without being connected to him and harmonizing with him. Right? Like if I severed my hand from my body, like the role of my hand is to serve my body. Right? Like whatever desires I have, the role of my hand is to serve that. Right? So what's my hand going to do if it's separated from my body? Is it going to make itself really beautiful and try to be like its own body? Like, no, the purpose of the hand is to serve the body. Similarly, the purpose of us, these living entities, is to serve the whole, right? If we don't, then God's created a system through which we can act independently and gain realization. And that's what we're doing here in this material existence, is that we've forgotten our actual identity. So we're here in this material existence being our own independent controllers, right? With our own egos and our own sense of like, I am great, I am the center. And through that, God's created this kind of this karmic, you know, system for us to continually learn these lessons that when we act like that, when we act like we're the center, we're going to be pushed down, right? We're going to be pushed against. And if it's not externally, then it's internally, right? Then we're feeling it. We're feeling the pressure. We're feeling the anxiety. We're feeling the lamentation, right? That comes with that kind of mentality because it's not our rightful mentality. Our rightful mentality is that we serve the whole, right? That we serve the center, that we're not the center. And when we act as if we're the center, we suffer. And to some degree, externally, internally, it's going to get you. You're going to suffer. And that's God's created a system to teach us that, right? And He's given us this free will so that we can choose to turn back to Him, or we can choose to explore this kind of misconception a little bit more that we're the center until we get bruised up enough that we turn to God and we say, ouch, like this hurts. I don't want to live like this anymore. This is suffering, right? I'm not well. I'm not okay. Right. And in that way, we turn back to God and we try to serve the center, right? We try to get ourselves out of the center. And Duryodhana, when we talked about at the beginning of the Gita, Duryodhana is the evil son, right? He's on the other side than Arjuna. He's stuck in this system, right? He's looking for happiness outside. He's not looking to harmonize with God. He's looking to be the controller. He's looking to be the center, right? Arjuna, he's struggling, right? He has his family attachment, and he's struggling, but he's open to this spiritual knowledge and this guidance to make a wiser choice. We saw that in the second chapter, the 7th verse, when he says, I don't know what to do. I'm bewildered. I'm surrendered to you. Please help me. Right? Let's be like Arjuna, right? We don't got it. If we got it, we wouldn't be stuck in this system. But we know we don't got it, right? We know that we're not okay. Right? We know that we need to be open to the spiritual knowledge. And let's look for that, right? And instead of just kind of trying to cover up our own incompetencies. Right? We're struggling, but we're trying. We know we're meant to serve God, and we're trying. So after describing this ultimate result, Krishna will describe how this happens. Okay, and that's the next verse. Wow, we're already at 8:20. We don't even have to get through all this today. Does anybody want to share anything? Love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, I just wanted to share one thing. You were talking about like loving everybody, like even our enemies or those who have wronged us and stuff. And I always kind of artificially followed that, like when I was younger, like I always tried to do that. I mean, I avoided most people, but I didn't like develop enemies or anything. But when I went through the separation from Luna's father, it was like, I hated him. Like I had so much anger towards him. And I could feel how like negative that was in myself and my own being. And then finally I received this forgiveness meditation. And and it's from like the Buddhist teachings, but you say it for yourself first, because ultimately we chose to put ourselves into that situation and that lesson. Then you say it for someone who you have so much love for, so that your heart opens up. And then you say it for someone that you're like having, tension with. And I practiced that every time, I would like get pissed off at something he would do or say, or like things weren't going the way I thought that should be going. I would practice that, and it was huge. And I can see the effects of it now, a couple years later, and I'll still do it. Like if now we have pretty good communication and everything's pretty smooth, but I guarantee you it's only because I practiced that forgiveness meditation, and I was able to clear out that anger and that animosity towards him. And it didn't like fix the relationship, but it made the relationship functional where it's at. And it's huge to forgive someone, to love someone for their spirit soul. And that was also part of like the whole meditation is like, um, may I truly be happy. May I live in peace. May I live in love. May I understand the power of forgiveness. and may I know that my life has deep meaning and good purpose. So you say that for yourself, you say that for someone you love, and then you say it for the person that you're angry at. And I would do that and I would meditate on that, but I would also meditate on the fact that, like, yeah, he's a spirit soul, like uh, uh, ultimately I understand, like, he's a spirit soul, and I understand we're just playing these roles, and for whatever reason we had to go through that karmic lesson. But yeah, it's huge. So I definitely, like, if anybody has like anger towards anybody, or you have tension with people, it's like when you can practice forgiveness and loving them and praying for them from afar and praying for their soul, it just clears the junk out of you. You might not see a change in them, but you'll see the change in yourself, and it's beautiful.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
So nice. And it's so true, it's we love people based off of how they treat us, right? Which is fair, which is functional on one level. But what God's trying to stretch us to do is love people just because they're a part of him, and and not based off of how, we feel about them, right? How they impact our ego, our clashing with their ego. We just love them because we love God. We know that that's our real purpose. And then through that, it's an extension of God that we love others. It's like a whole different way of loving. It's almost like tricky because we're so used to being the center, to putting ourselves in the center, and then having opinions of everybody else based off of that, relative to that, how that affects us, how that makes us feel. But this is different. It's God in the center, right? And that's how we develop our that's where we love from. It's a whole different place. Yeah, it's really nice. Thank you. If you have that forgiveness meditation you want to share on our Gita Sangha thread,
Yeah.
feel free.
I'll write it down.
It sounds really powerful. Twinkle Basha, did you want to share something? I think I saw your
Hello.
hand up.
Yeah,
Hi.
yeah. Hi, Hare Krishna. Yes, I would also like to share one experience with me, which happened recently, and I'm not sure how to, like, I have let go this experience, but I'm still somewhere, the noises in my head comes up. So it was like, I met a guy, and it was through arranged marriage platform, and like we had a very good time, like for like when he met me he lost his job, but we prayed together, we got connected spiritually, and he got very good job also, but this whole thing was for marriage. So I never thought of, that he doesn't have job, I should look for another person or something. But he was new for me. Like I didn't know him from like months or something, but I just come to know about him, and he lost his job. So it was very new for me. But I thought if God has placed him in my life, it is for some reason. So and I was practicing Krishna consciousness at that time. So he also like kind of joined me, like in because we were meeting, he was here, and then finally he got a very good job, um, and after that we got like we had one function where our families announced our engagement or something. But after that I got sick, like after 2 weeks I got sick. So he completely changed, his parents changed, and I was not able to understand. Um, I got sick like it was a surgery, and then he became very oh, health is wealth. You are not well, and like you are not well. If there would have been any other person, he would have done same. Like for 1 month he acted because I was going through a surgery, so he acted like a nice person. He was telling me that my mother is not uh, allowing for this marriage anymore, but I'm trying my hard. But it was just for my surgery, and I got well and everything went well, but he kind of left me. And like after a year, we were knowing each other since years, and it was so shocking for me. Um, like I couldn't understand, but yes, I was also very angry at him because when I was doing it, I was doing it unconditionally. There was no condition, but when he tried to leave me, or when he did something which was like, for me, it was very selfish of him. So I started to be really angry on him. I don't know why I was so angry. Sometimes I have forgiven that he has left me, but I felt inside me that why I was doing it. If he wanted to go, why I didn't let him go. Why I was
Mm.
trying to make him understand my worth or my
Yeah.
love. So that was sometimes it's been like 8 months now, but sometimes I wake up and I have conversation with his family or with him in my mind, because I was really making him understand like for months that you are doing wrong with me.
Right.
And I was like, mm, we shared a bond spiritually. So maybe I was controlling him, or I was trying to control him. But at the end, what I realize is like two things. Sometimes I keep, like, whenever I wake up or whenever, now it's not much, of course, with time, and I have forgiven myself also and him also. But the worst thing is that I feel bad for myself that I was angry at him. I didn't
Mm.
let him go. If he wanted to go, I should have, okay, fine, we had a good time. But he was
Yeah.
like that, we had a good time. And so, yeah, so it's
Yeah.
it's very confusing sometimes, and I don't know. I think with time and with grace, I will be able to let go everything. But this kind of conversation I had, sometimes I still, make them understand that you didn't do right. And sometimes I try to have conversation with myself. Oh, why you were so angry? If
Right.
he wanted to go, of course I said sorry to him, because this making him understand was also like 2 3 months of process. So 1 month I was really angry, crying, and that something is really bad is happening to me. But when I understood that, okay, it's conditioning, that his parents and everything is conditioning, I tried to lower my guards. I was like losing my self respect also in that process. But I
Yeah.
don't know.
I appreciate you sharing so vulnerably with us. And
Yeah. Mhm.
you should know that you're not alone, and that we all have not cannot have not been in the same situation, but I've shared experiences where we've put a lot of our trust into a person or a relationship, and it's kind of not panned out the way that we felt like we expected it to, or that we put a lot of our trust into it. And we do have to function in this world, so we do have to discern between healthy places to put our love and our trust. And when we're talking about navigating in this material existence, but through these experiences, I think God teaches all of us that the only like real sound, like safe place to really invest your whole self is in a relationship with God.
Yes.
And our other relationships and our other roles are really intended to support that. And if those roles aren't supporting that, then better, maybe it's okay that they separate there. And maybe, like you said, it's not something to hold on to, because it's not uplifting our consciousness and bringing us closer to God. And in that way, God takes care of it for us. And yes, sometimes we just have to let that happen. But to the degree that our true love is God, that we're really vested in that relationship above everything else, well, to the degree it'll be easier to let go of things that don't support that, and even to identify things that don't support that. And again, on the big scale, we love everyone anyway. But that doesn't mean that we're completely vested in a relationship with everyone. That just means that in our heart of hearts we don't carry resentment or envy, or we're their well-wisher. But we have to be almost like ninjas in deciding what we involve ourselves in, because that directly impacts our consciousness and directly impacts our relationship with God. And if we're in the business here of making that the center of our lives, then that's our primary responsibility. And we just always need to come back to that. And to the degree that we forget, God will remind us through these kinds of experiences that I think we've all had. But it's so nice to hear from you. I haven't met you yet, Twinkle, and I appreciate your story and empathize deeply with that. That sounds like a very painful situation, and I'm happy you're here.
Mhm. Thank you for your insights. Yeah. Yes, I think yeah, that showed me that the real relationship is always with God. He doesn't deceive us.
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't change with situations, you know. He's there with us in our health, like
Yeah.
health, sickness, and even after death also he's with us. So he's eternally present, yes. So yes.
Yeah, my
And
husband would say you dodged a bullet. That's what my husband would say. She dodged a bullet.
hmm,
Meaning that, you could have married this person and found out much later how difficult things would have been, or how, it wasn't really what you thought. And
hmm,
in one way, God protected you from that, even though it was painful. It could have been much down the line with kids, or, things could have got much more complicated.
yeah,
Another way to look at it. But
yeah. Yeah, but the thing is, now in my heart, like as you said, in hearts of heart, it's always well wishing for that person also, that
mm,
But
yeah.
yes, I think is it mind who always have this conversation, because my soul doesn't have any grudge. Is it mind who wants this kind of engagement with past situations? Yeah,
It's definitely not the soul. It's definitely our conditioning and us trying to play God, trying to take that role,
yeah,
right? Trying to be the
mm,
center instead of serving the center. And we try to,
mm,
change the other person, or we try to extend our influence in ways that
mm,
are not meant for us. And in that way, we
yeah,
just invoke more suffering in our own lives from trying to play
yeah,
that role it's not rightfully ours, and instead of accepting sometimes. Yeah, I could
mm,
totally relate to that. I get my hand slapped over and over again in this life for doing that,
mm,
trying to meddle in things that just aren't mine to meddle in, and better just to
yeah,
accept that this person
yes,
is like this and this relationship is like this, and how do I want to show up? What kind of energy do I want to bring to it? But understanding that I can't change this person. I'm not God.
yeah, yes,
These are hard
yeah,
lessons, but it sounds like you're doing great. You're
yes,
learning
yes,
them, and you're having these experiences, and you're taking this away. That's all we can all do. You know,
mm,
that's all we can do, is just try to handle these situations a little bit better each time. Try to maybe practice discernment a little bit before, let go a little bit
mm,
sooner. Practice acceptance a little bit, save ourselves a little bit of that suffering, and learn a little bit more so that we can be in better situations the next time, you know.
yes. Okay, thank you. Mhm,
Thank you for sharing.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for being here. So beautiful to hear from you all. And I'll see you all on Thursday.